Yes, me lord.
Job's done.
What is it?
Oh,
Ready to
well,
roll
right.
my go then.
Yes, my
Yes,
lord.
me
Job's
lord.
done.
I'm really struggling, guys. I recently accepted a job offer from the Alliance to help them with human resources, and ever since then I've been flooded with reports about peasants needing work, about things being done faster than I can process them, about tragic loss of life. I can't keep up. I'm completely overwhelmed, but I don't understand how I could have gotten so far in over my head. I mean, look at my resume. Look at my qualifications. It says right here that I completed Warcraft 3's campaigns on normal difficulty. I have enough history with real-time strategy games to know that I'm absolutely atrocious at them. I have practically no knowledge of the genre, of what I'm supposed to do to win, or of not wasting my resources. Still though, I've given the genre a shot a few times, mostly through the Blizzard titles, and why wouldn't I take that avenue? Diablo 2 is one of my favorite games. I learned that my dad owned Warcraft 3 when I was in the 6th grade, and I tried it out, playing the base game's human campaign and cheating in 8-player free-for-alls against computers. Then later down the line, I made a more serious effort for a week or two in high school with StarCraft when a group of my friends tried to learn together. I chose Zerg and actually looked up a few guides, but in the end I just couldn't keep up and all of my friends lost interest. There's a few factors that brought me back to Warcraft, and all of them are because of MOBAs. I love the MOBA genre, and when you really get down to it, it's because of Warcraft 3 and the original Dota that the genre exists in the first place. I wanted to improve my map awareness in League of Legends, so training my brain and awareness on a real-time strategy game sounded super appealing. And although my main MOBA is League, I've fallen in love with Heroes of the Storm lately. It's just a fun game. But as I'm playing the game, having a good time with my Diablo characters and appreciating the references and their talents, I'm also looking at the Warcraft characters and asking questions like, who's Malfurion? What's Kael'thas's deal? Why is Kel'Thuzad one-shotting me? A blossoming interest in learning more about these characters in a game that I love is really what motivated me to play Warcraft 3. Warcraft 3 has 8 campaigns, 4 in its base game, Reign of Chaos, and 4 in the expansion, Frozen Throne. There's a campaign for each of the playable factions, Human, Orc, Undead, and Night Elf, in each half of the game. The thing I really like about this presentation is that each of these campaigns come together to tell a single story from the perspective of a ton of different characters. I found it captivating to watch how the actions of one character could affect the others in different factions as the story went on. Though it's also kind of funny that exactly 2 characters were invariably good people who never did anything wrong. It's just Thrall and Malfurion. Yeah, get out of here, Tyrande, you're awful too. Spoiling as little as possible, I found the story of both the base game and the expansion captivating. Reign of Chaos is about the impending demon invasion of Azeroth, something that seems to be a trend according to the lore, and has a fantastic conclusion of its own, while Frozen Throne is all about the fallout of that campaign and the consequences of the actions of all of the characters. I came to understand a lot of Warcraft lore, and the best part of the narrative is how intimately connected to the gameplay it is. The story is character-based because the gameplay is character-based, with heroes leading your armies. There's not a single level of this game that exists just to exist. Your gameplay objective is always a direct consequence of what's happening in the plot, and even if there are a few dull levels within all of these campaigns, I can at least respect that they're all solidly framed within a narrative that I consider excellent. So let's get into the actual gameplay. It's an RTS game, so its gameplay must be the core focus, right? Well, yes, but not exactly in the way that you might think for the single-player content. Since Warcraft 3 is predominantly a multiplayer competitive game, its campaigns in a sense act as a tutorial for how to play, which I think is great for someone like myself. Each level has different restrictions on the units and buildings you can produce and different objectives, which ends up introducing you to all aspects of a faction slowly throughout its campaign. If you've gone through the campaigns, then you'll understand what you're seeing in multiplayer, and the coolest thing about this is that different levels develop different skills. In some levels you have no town, just a limited amount of units who need to reach the end of the level. These are the dungeon crawls, testing your micro skills, and although I did appreciate having to pay a little more attention to my units and their individual health bars and their positioning and learning how all of that works, it's also these levels where I feel the Warcraft 3 campaign is at its weakest. The game wasn't built to control a single group of units, keeping your camera on them at all times. So the dungeon crawls have the pace of your grandmother attempting to evacuate Lordaeron because of the Scourge, that is to say, slower than you'd hope, and it's not an uncommon style of level. On the other hand, the levels where you do have a town and you do have to manage your unit production and research, keep yourself defended, and choose the right time to attack, are the game at its best. These levels gave an experience similar to multiplayer games, but with a greater room for error and learning, more resources than you usually have, and difficulty that honestly isn't super high for the most part, which works great in a style of game with tons of things to keep track of at all times. I had tons of fun keeping up with everything, and as I learned the hotkeys and learned how to manipulate control groups, the game just kept getting better and better. And though I mentioned the difficulty isn't that high, it does get harder over time, culminating in some brutal climaxes at the end of the campaign after you've become comfortable with your units. Somehow, the difficulty curve matches the learning curve perfectly. And though not all missions are created equally, the objective diversity is higher than I expected. There are standard destroy the enemy base style missions, but there's also rescue missions, there's races to defeat more neutral enemies than your opponents, there's defensive missions where you have to just hold out, which are consistently difficult and exciting, I loved this type, and then there's the absolute best. Missions where you control multiple groups, sometimes of different factions with their own resources and unit caps and towns at the same time. Those missions take the complexity of the game and crank it up even further in a good way. Now, I'd be lying if I said I thoroughly enjoyed every mission of the campaign. There were definitely some snoozers, but overall, when you factor in the difficulty progression of the campaigns, you factor in the diversity of the objectives, you factor in the overall fun that I had, I can say that this game is some high, classic Blizzard quality. The quality also extends to the soundtracks and graphics. Mostly. Warcraft 3's soundtrack fulfills its purpose as background music excellently, where you don't really notice it while you're playing that much, but you absolutely recognize it and appreciate it when you listen to it again. The Orc soundtrack is my favorite for sure, with the big booming drums and horns, and I've had this one playing while working and studying a lot recently. Each of the playable factions have their own sonic style, different instrumentation, and I think that's really cool as well. Graphically, the landscapes are great, the UI is comfortable, the icons are nice, the models are in the game. Now, look, I understand it's an old game, and it's a style of game where there have to be a ton of models on screen at once. I get it, I understand why they look this way, and to their credit, they serve their purpose well enough from above. I do think they look fine from their intended perspective, just don't zoom in on them. All of this combined makes for an absolutely outstanding game that I genuinely wanted to continue playing after finishing the campaigns. I made the decision to try to learn this game from a multiplayer standpoint since I had so much fun. While I had no idea which faction to choose, I'm leaning towards undead, but really, I don't know. Tragically, this game's biggest problem prevented me from finalizing that choice. That problem is unethical capitalism. Activision Blizzard is terrible. Because Activision Blizzard is terrible, you can no longer patch the original Warcraft 3 discs. I'm perpetually stuck on an older version of the game which is incompatible with the servers. Because of this, the 8th campaign, set after the actual conclusion of the Frozen Throne storyline with a completely different gameplay style hybridizing RTS and RPG elements, cannot be completed because it's a bonus campaign where more chapters were released later with patches. And to be honest, I didn't love the 8th campaign style much, but I at least wanted to see it through. You can still patch Diablo 2 through Battle.net, but classic Warcraft 3 patches are locked behind its critically panned and objectively inferior remaster. I cannot patch without spending $40 on a worse version of a game I already own. Therefore, I cannot play multiplayer. That is atrocious. Well, since Blizzard wouldn't let me practice, I've been fired by the Alliance for gross negligence. I was worried I'd have to fall back on my side gig of streaming on twitch.tv/Quintic, as well as asking for likes and subscriptions on my YouTube channel where I make more reviews like this, as well as stream highlights and edited guides. But fortunately, the Horde was impressed by my ability to lead humans to their demise, and they've offered me a job. I'm about to start now, so I hope this one goes a lot better.
Something need doing? Where I can do that. Be happy what to. Ready to work. Where I'll try. Where something need doing? I can be happy to. Busy. Where me alone. Happy to. Ready to work. Yes. Happy to. Something need doing?